Oh we. Our protagonist fell from his bed after waking up from a dream. Oh, it was a dream. Well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Ah, suddenly he shouted. Hold on, what time is it? Am I late? Suddenly he remembered. Today should be Saturday, the first holiday after half a year, where he didn't have to work. Since he could rarely enjoy 2 consecutive holidays after becoming a working adult, he knowingly woke up at the same time like during the week and took a drive with his bicycle to the nearby convenience store to fetch some breakfast. He properly remembered it up to this point. Our protagonist's name is Yamai Zenjirou. He is a normal salesperson, who has been working for a pretty shady company. Due to such he had to work 150 hours overtime in a month. Zenjirou's bottom was placed on the saddle of the bicycle even now and his hands were holding the handle. Stuffed into the front basket were the heated-up fried chicken lunchbox and a 500 milliliters PET bottle with green tea. He was thinking of a way to utilize his holiday the best he could. Suddenly, his surrounding changed. I welcome you, my future husband. First off, I offer you my apologies for my impolite behavior of bringing you here into this world, into this palace of mine without any notice. I ask you to forgive me. The captivating beautiful woman with red hair and light brown skin called out to him with a sweet smile. Ha! The man the woman called out to, Yamai Zenjirou raised a dumbfounded voice without comprehending the situation at all. Just what was going on? To confirm his sanity, Zenjirou, still sitting on the bicycle, reached out his right hand and tried touching the lunchbox and tea in the basket. The lunchbox was warm and the tea cold. This actual sensation made this unlikely to be a dream. While on the topic, the lunchbox hadn't cooled down and the tea hadn't become lukewarm, so it was unlikely too that he lost consciousness and was taken somewhere far away without knowing it. However, if that was the case, then why did he have to be smiled at by a stunning beauty in a dim and stony room like this when he was pedaling his bicycle through the Kanto area in Japan just a moment ago? Zenjirou inadvertently peered hard at the beautiful woman standing in front of him. She must be in the middle of her 20s. Though for that she showed an unusual appeal and composure, so she might be a bit older than that. At least she didn't look younger than the 24-year-old Zenjirou. She wore a slinky red dress with a V-neck around her chest, but her figure was in no way inferior to this elegant dress. The cleavage peeking out from the V-neck prided itself with a size that was worth being called enormous, one size above huge, and her slender waist was inversely proportional to it. A long skirt covered the line down from her waist, so he couldn't see it, but at this rate there was much to anticipate. Her figure with broad and somewhat square shoulders would turn off some men with certain tastes, but at least to Zenjirou, she had plenty of womanly charm. Zenjirou, being a salary worker, instinctively bowed and apologized, which caused a commotion and led to the Sodders raising their spears against him. Seeing the situation, the women shouted to lower the spears and asked for forgiveness. I am sure you have no idea why you are here. May I explain and warrant the chain of events? Yes. Zenjirou shook his head vertically, overwhelmed by her smile rather than comprehending her words. On his obedient reply, the woman brightened her smile. Good. Now then, we cannot have a leisurely talk in this dim place, so we should move on. Please follow me. The woman said so, then turned around with her red hair flattering greatly and walked away. We will take care of this vehicle of yours. Okay. Thanks. Without having the slightest clue, Zenjirou got off his bicycle and somewhat habitual flipped down the kickstand, locking the bicycle with the key from his trousers. Then he quickly went after the woman, who looked back at him at the entrance. Passing through a long hallway with stony walls and floor, Zenjirou was guided to a broad room into which the bright sun rays shone. 2 long leather couches were set up across each other with a big wooden table in between. Prompted by the woman, Zenjirou sat down on the couch. After waiting for him to sit down, the woman sat down across of him and slowly opened her mouth. Let us start with a self-introduction. My name is Ora Karpa. I want you to call me Ora. Okay, Ora-san it is. No, my name is Yamai Zenjirou. Yamai is my last name and Zenjirou my first name. Okay. Then may I call you Zenjirou-dano? Yes, by all means. Hearing his affirmation, the woman Ora smiled happily. Thank you, Zenjirou-dano. Well then, I will now simply explain the chain of events of what happened to you. To you it might sound like an absurd action that you cannot agree with, but do know that it is not impossible to undo the current situation. Should it go against your will, I will make everything like before. That I promise you. So could you please listen to my whole story in silence for now? Ora made a rather unsettling prologue with a sudden serious expression, whereupon Zenjirou got a bad feeling, but after pondering for a bit, he nodded in the end. At any rate, he had no clue in what kind of situation he was right now anyway. Altogether, before showing any anger like Aura had mentioned, he could not get angry over a situation he didn't understand. One filed a complaint after hearing the whole standpoint from the other party. I understand. Please let me hear it. On Zenjirou's answer, Aura made a sigh of relief and after a deep breath, she started to talk. Thank you. Then I will start explaining from the fundamentally question of what this place is. We are in the Karpa Kingdom, which is located in the west of the Land Lion continent, also known as the South Continent. And this is a room in the palace, which is the center of the capital of Karpa. I am sure all these names do not mean anything to you. Well, naturally, since this is a different world from the one you were born and lived in. A so-called parallel universe. Ha! Parallel universe? Still not comprehending the situation, Zenjirou tilted his head, whereas Aura gave him a wry look and continued to explain. Aura's explanation went on for a long time. Or more precisely, he couldn't tell at all, but when he looked at his wristwatch midway once, it was 7:30 and right now with the explanation all done with, the needle of the clock had turned to the 8. Somehow gleaning Aura's explanation that had lasted for at least 30 minutes, but more likely 1 hour, into his head, Zenjirou said in a dazed tone. The reason that this simple explanation took nearly 1 hour was that Zenjirou hadn't really tried to understand her words. Well, understandable. There was no way that a typical Japanese from the modern age would take a strange occurrence like being summoned to a different world as reality. Aura persistently kept explaining to Zenjirou, who was quite doubtful about this being a different world, without getting irritated. As a result, Zenjirou finally admitted the fact that he was in a different world right now. The deciding factor was the raptorial dragon ridden by a knight that came to the window on Aura's order. This ridiculously large lizard with twice the size of a horse, had stuck his long neck through the window from the garden and licked Zenjirou's cheek. That lukewarm and real sensation ridded Zenjirou of any possibilities that this was a dream or some large-scale prank. Zenjirou spoke out a question while wiping the raptorial dragon's grass-stinking saliva from his wet cheek with the sleeve of his t-shirt. In other words, this is a country called the Karpa Kingdom in a different world and you, Aura-sama, are the queen of it, correct? Furthermore, magic exists in this world and you used a space-time magic that's only practicable by the royal family to summon me into this world. Yes, that is correct. It seems you finally understand. Also, you do not need to use respective speech with me. Just casually call me Aura. Certainly, I am the queen of this country, but you are not a citizen of my country. Or rather, I dragged you into this world without any notice, so you are nothing but a victim. At the present time there stands no reason for you to accord me your courtesy. Saying so, Aura remorsefully lowered her head a bit. Oh, okay, I understand, Aura-san. Zenjirou hastily averted his eyes from Aura's voluminous cleavage. He got a deep insight on due to her bow. What I don't get is why you would summon something like me. Zenjirou had no special skills and was just your average Japanese male. At least he didn't consider himself valuable enough to purposefully be summoned by a queen to a different world through magic. You're going to make me do something, right? Not to brag about it, but I can't swing a sword, nor can I use any magic. To discourage her from it, Zenjirou said so with a timid tone, whereas Aura smiled sweetly and shook her head. No, I have not the slightest intentions to make you do something so dangerous. This western part of the South Continent was engulfed in a long war for generations, but now it has relatively calmed down. What I want to ask of you is just one thing. To become my spouse. Spouse? Zenjirou didn't understand the meaning behind Aura's words right away, so he tilted his head and asked back. Yes, my spouse. Or husband, if you prefer it that way. I am asking you to marry me. Spouse, husband, marry. After being told that much, even Zenjirou's currently slow brain comprehended it. Yui. May marry. Why? Understanding Aura's request, Zenjirou jumped up from the couch. As she predicted his reaction to some extent, Aura laughed a bit, then continued to explain with a calm voice. This will take a while, but please hear me out first. Like I said before, my country fought a long war. Fortunately our country managed to be on the winning side in this war, but the price was high. We lost citizens, the aristocrats were displeased and the royal family died out, except for me. Blessedly there is hope for rehabilitation in some way thanks to the support the citizens and aristocrats gave the country afterwards, but the problem is the royal family. With me as the last member of the royal family, our bloodline could end any time, so you could call my marriage an absolute duty. However, the Karpa lineage inherits the unique space-time magic in its blood. Not just anyone will do for a marriage partner. To bequeath the magic onto the next generation, a companion that inherited the same Karpa blood would be most desirable. Ha, I see. Not quite comprehending it, Zenjirou gave an agreeable response on reflex. The custom of taking a partner with a blood relation as close as possible to keep the royal lineage pure-blooded was often practiced on Earth in the past too. All the more was it natural to value a purebred in this world, where it came with the practical benefit of an inherited, bloodline magic. However, he understood the current situation even less then. But if that's the case, why me? I'm just an earthling that doesn't even know the runes for magic. Aura smiled meaningful upon Zenjirou's frank question and answered. The reason is quite simple, because you clearly inherited the blood of the Karpa family. Ha! This time for sure Zenjirou didn't understand the meaning behind Aura's words for a while. You inherited the blood of the Karpa family. It took him more than 10 seconds to comprehend the meaning behind these words. Zenjirou flapped his hand in front of his face like a broken doll and denied Aura's words. No, no. What's up with that? Not possible, never. Zenjirou denied it with all his might, but Aura continued her speech without paying mind to it. It dates back to 5 generations before me, roughly 150 years ago. It was erased from the royal documents, so I am not so sure myself, but I heard that it all started with the first prince of our country at that time, who fell in love with a woman that he originally should not marry. It is both said that this woman was just a commoner or the princess of a rival country, but the truth is unknown. Anyway, the prince fell in love with a person that he would never be allowed to marry since he was in line to succeed the throne and he did not even listen to his parents, the king and queen. Since they were not allowed to be together in this world, the two lovers decided to go into a different world and be together there. Quite romantic. Being told that much, Zenjirou could guess what Aura wanted to say. Do you want to say that I'm their descendant? Exactly. Zenjirou asked back dumbfounded, whereas Aura affirmed it without breaking her smile. I did not use the summoning magic just like that. I specified it, so that it inevitable would summon a man that inherited the blood of the Karpa family. As a result, you appeared, Zenjirou. Thus there is no doubt that you are their descendant. Even while Zenjirou affirmed Aura's definitely stated words in a part of his brain, he still put out another objection. That can't be. No, even if it's true, it's 5 generations ago, you know. That means he would be my, great-great-great-grandfather. So I inherited just a tiny bit. Aura nodded shortly to these words from Zenjirou once, then answered with a firm tone. Yes, and to be honest, I was prepared for that too. However, to my surprise, you have inherited it quite strongly. It is not as strong as a direct descendant, but on the level of a branch family's head and so much that we can hope for you to use the space-time magic yourself with some training. You can even tell that. Aura declared with a serious expression, whereas Zenjirou inquired while relocating his seating position backwards wincing. I can. I might not be able to say if you inherited the royal blood or not, but I can confirm the latent magic power in someone on sight. Zenjirou, your magic power is a semi-royal class. I'm already here and all, but what if, and I mean just hypothetically, what happens if I turn down your proposal? It was obvious at a first glance what he feared by seeing his face color while he timidly asked so. To reassure the pale man in front of her, Aura answered with a diligent smile. In that case, I will naturally take responsibility and return you to your own world with the deport magic. I told you at the beginning, remember? Should it go against your will, I will make everything like before. As things stand, I already dragged you into this world without any notice. I have the discretion to reverse everything in case that you decline. Please be at ease and come up with an answer as your heart dictates you. Is that so? On Aura's answers, Zenjirou made a deflated sigh of relief. In other words, if you decline my offer, I will send you back home and everything will be over. If you accept it, I will let you return temporarily tomorrow and summon you again in month. Oh, it can be used that frequently? Zenjirou made an easygoing observation, whereas Aura shook her head with a wry smile. No, we are just blessed with a special star constellation. In fact, if we let the chance next month go by, we will have to wait 30 years for the next. There is no need to be overly worried, but we cannot take it too optimistic. Gay, no way, 30 years. On Aura's answer, Zenjirou inadvertently forgot his respective speech and leaked his natural voice. 30 years was certainly too long. If he were to accept this marriage proposal, he would have to say goodbye to Earth for good without doubt. After some thought, I'm really not attached to my life on Earth. His original world. No lover and every day full of work. This world. Marriage with a hot babe. When he compared it over again, wasn't this proposal a so-called godsend for Zenjirou? He thought about that for a moment, but his mentality, out of control from his original timidity, put a stop to it. No, wait. Even if everything so far is true, I still haven't heard about one factor. Ora-san's a queen, right? There's no way I would get to sit back and do nothing after marrying a queen. The royal family members were born to be politicians. In novel or manga, princes often lived a rosy life, but they were nothing but an exception, and those that took their royal obligations serious were so busy all the time that you pitied them. Instead of such a lifestyle, it would be easier to be a black suit salary man in his original world. I promise that once we marry, I will do everything in my might to meet your wishes, whatever it might be. She uttered incredible sweet words like that. Oh. The conversation had totally gone over Zenjirou's head, and he answered with a silly reply and a blank facial expression. If he could trust all of Ora's story, then he would have no special obligations to fulfill when marrying her, and she even would be compliant, trying her best to please him. That sounded way too convenient. Not even Zenjirou, whose brain gears were still working slowly, could accept this so easily. It was obviously too good to be true. Wait, just think about it. There has to be something behind it. Faced with conditions so good that he inadvertently wanted to swallow them without judging too strictly, Zenjirou desperately racked his brain. To begin with, what does Ora-san gain from this marriage? Preserving the royal bloodline. Just that? Zenjirou strongly inherited the royal blood, so his existence was incredibly appealing for sure, considering that the royal family died out except for Ora. However, would one offer such sweet conditions just for that? A husband that did nothing but making a child. The world called them spongers. Going so far as to make her husband a sponger, maybe Ora-san has a high craving for good-for-nothings. Can't be. If that wasn't the case, there should be some huge merit for her somewhere. Otherwise she wouldn't have offered such sweet conditions to begin with, no matter how suitable to the lineage Zenjirou was. It's no use. I don't know enough. Push through a deal without reading the small print and it'll come back to haunt you later. Zenjirou recalled the bitter words of his senior at work and asked Ora a question afterwards. Excuse me. Getting back on topic, what will you do when I reject your offer, Ora-san? You will still have to marry, right? Yes. In that case, I will most likely have to accept an aristocrat with relatively strong royal blood from within the country as my husband. Though while I say strong, it is not all that noteworthy. That is precisely the reason I went through all the trouble to call you here, Zenjirou-dano, albeit knowing what troubles it causes you. Ora showed a self-deprecating smile. I see. She technically has groom candidates in the country too. Well, figures. Wait, could it be I'll try a leading question? Zenjirou suddenly came up with a certain possibility, swallowed his saliva unknown to Ora, then asked the next question with a voice that feigned composure as much as possible. I take that these candidates had their great-grandfather or great-grandmother in the royal family? Ora, not seeing through his leading question, shook her head with a wry smile. Not at all. There is no one left with such thick kinship. They are people whose great-grandfather's grandfather or at best, great-grandfather's mother was part of the royal family. I knew it. Bingo. Zenjirou hid his inner surprise on Ora's answer and somehow kept a poker face. His superior at work once said, in business let your reason control your expression, not your emotion. That teaching came to be useful in a different world. Ora's answer just now was obviously strange. To express it in numbers, the aforementioned were people with royal blood in the 5th generation in case of the great-grandfather's grandfather or in the 4th generation in case of the great-grandfather's mother. In turn, Zenjirou's ancestor that came to Earth, lived 5 generations ago. If there were people around with blood in the 4th generation like Ora said, then there was no reason to summon Zenjirou, whose blood was only in the 5th generation. Zenjirou had a rather thick kinship due to the isolated rural village he was raised in, but Ora shouldn't have known about that until she summoned him. In fact, she called it a lucky surprise. In other words, the very explanation about summoning a groom from a different world to have a child with someone that strongly inherited the royal blood was a lie. Then why did she summon me? Maybe even the stuff about marrying me was a lie. No, don't go there. If I doubt that, there's no end to it. Zenjirou himself had basically no way to return home by his own strength. Going by that, Ora had no need to deceive him with an appealing offer, because she could just lie to him with, there is no way to return you to your original world. Most likely Ora was trying to have a discussion as sincere as possible. So it should be safe to assume that both her desire to marry me and the favorable conditions are true. And it makes more sense that way. But then why? Why did Orasan dare to summon a descendant, whose kinship was weaker than the aristocrats in this country, from the royal family that fled to a different world and even give such favorable conditions? Zenjirou-dano? What is the matter? Maybe my assumption is actually true. These conditions aren't favorable to me, but right from the beginning, they were the most desirable ones to Orasan. Zenjirou arranged the information he had gained so far inside his head. The Karpa kingdom had people with a thicker kinship than the descendant from the royal family that fled into a different world. Yet, Aura dared to summon that descendant, Zenjirou, as her husband. Zenjirou happened to have strongly inherited the royal blood, but that was just a lucky surprise. Aura told him that he had nothing to do, except making a child. This country's society was fundamentally patriarchic and the existence of a queen was rare. By the culture of this country, the head of the family was always the husband while the wife had the virtue to be compliant. The queen so far had been single and in the history of this county, this would be the first time a prince consort existed. Going by their conversation so far and the overwhelming charisma coming from her whole body, Aura had more than enough talent as a queen. Zenjirou kept asking questions to prove if his assumption was correct. Allow me 2 more questions please. Where would I live if I were to stay here? In the inner palace, most likely. Usually the king of our country would take various wives as his queen or concubines. It is a bit of an irregularity, but the inner palace would become the home to our married life. As expected. There was nearly no doubt now. Then one last question. How would you take it if I were to shut in myself in the inner palace, avoid contact with the outside as much as possible, concern myself only with you and just spent my days by hanging around sloppily after I married you? Aura reflexively replied to Zenjirou's hypothetical question with today's brightest smile, as she couldn't hold it back anymore. That would be fantastic. Zenjirou confirmed that his assumption was completely correct upon that utterance. Okay, the puzzle is solved. There's no doubt. The condition, no need to do anything, isn't a bait for me, but she genuinely wants a husband that does nothing. Her first choice of a man was a sponger, in the truest sense of the word. If you thought about it, it wasn't actually all that strange. His days swamped with work in a kind of sweatshop, Zenjirou had tried to measure things with his own values, but that was his mistake. Since he was tired from work, getting a lifestyle without work and all necessities provided plus a beautiful bride was rather appealing to him, but that wasn't the general value concept in this world. For the one that became prince consort, working meant nothing else but exerting the political power. Surely only a minority of men found it unappealing to make use of a mighty political power. In this country, a prince consort could gain a respectable political power, even if his authority wasn't legally fixed. After all, the country's culture itself was modeled around a patriarchic society and the head of a family would always be a man, even if he married into the family. And the woman, who became his wife, was expected to be as compliant as possible to the man she married. So in an extreme case, the prince consort might even be able to order around the queen through the family instance. At least, the queen wouldn't be able to ignore the prince consort's opinion in public. Accepting Aura's proposal meant to throw away that pride and accept a lifestyle where he depended on a woman. Now, was that acceptable? Was Yamai Zenjirou's pride something so trivial that it could be thrown away so easily? If I think about it a bit calmly, it's nothing to be troubled over. It wasn't a matter to idly delay until tomorrow morning. Because he had already come to a conclusion. When Zenjirou opened his eyes with his mind made up, he looked straight into Aura's reddish-brown eyes, leaned over the table and said flatly, "Let's get married, Aura-san." Yamai Zenjirou's pride as a man counted indeed for nothing.